Thank you, Alex. And I apologize. As you guys know, folks, Zooms and technology sometimes work, sometimes they don't. But today we're going to make the best out of it. Thank you again so much, everyone, for tuning in today. We have an amazing lineup of speakers and organizations that have come together to really, again, educate us, let our community know of what we're currently doing, the activity. And there's a lot going on right now, but we have an amazing lineup today to really let us know how to engage civically. And again, just let us know how we could be more impactful in our communities. Thank you to our partners today, the California Hispanic Chambers of Commerce, the Association of Latino Professionals in America, ALFA, Orange County Chapter, the Latino Food Industry Association, Ready Nation, and also we have the California Hispanic Chambers of Commerce Foundation that have been tremendous in putting this together. The team, again, just bringing leadership across the state to really kind of share very important information around the census. Without further ado, I'd like to just kind of go on a little bit more and share about one of our partnering, excuse me, folks, I want to also make sure that I thank the Latino Community Foundation, which has also been key and instrumental in, putting a lot of this planning and also getting the word out there, championing not only the efforts around census, but also around voting across the state. So without further ado, I'd like to quickly introduce Rose Arevalo, the current president for the Association of Latino Professionals in America, to go over a little bit of, our partners here, ALFA. Rose?
Great. Thank you, Fidel. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone, and welcome. Bienvenidos a todos. Queremos compartir unas palabras con ustedes acerca de unos temas muy importantes. There you go, English and Spanish. ALFA is the Association of Latino Professionals for America. It's, if we can go to the next slide, it's an organization that is nationwide in scope. We have professionals, business owners, as well as students as our members. And it's been around for over 45 years, closer to 47 years. Really, the mission is to empower individuals, Latinas, Latinas, Latinx, Hispanic. We are part of the same community. And what we strive to do is really to elevate, to empower for impact in every sector of the economy. So if we can go to the next slide. We're present, as I said, with a footprint nationwide, and I represent the ALFA Orange County Professional Chapter. Each professional chapter is based in most major cities, as you can see. And then with each of those chapters, we have student chapters that align with us geographically. So we're in contact with them, we're in contact with our sponsors, as well as our community partners. And ALFA is here. We provide different events for professional development, for leadership, and we're so glad to be here with you. And then on a personal note, I want to let you know that I'm also a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur, and I represent ILS. We're Industrial Listing Services, a technology platform that delivers commercial property data. And so thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and be in this nonpartisan event where we can share lots of great information with you. Fidel, thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you so much, everyone. And I'd like to just thank you once again. I know we have a lot more people joining in and tuning in to join us about and learn about this amazing panel discussion. The goal for this webinar is to amplify platforms and outreach to community during these critical times and inform them on census and voting for the 2020 elections. In light of the final date to complete the census being pushed up a month, there are several issues at stake, and it's critical that organizations come together to share and educate the community better around these impactful issues and the impact for them and our communities. There are several, as I mentioned, there are several issues at stake, and it's critical that we all come together, and also leaders are leading the charge to engage and activate our communities. I'd like to go in and share a little bit more about our panelists today. I know we already heard briefly from Rose, but I'd like to also share that, in addition to being the current chapter president for the Association of Latino Professionals, she also has an extensive corporate business and development strategy expertise. As she mentioned, she's the CEO at Industrial Listing Services, that which delivers timely data on available commercial real estate properties. Rose launched the Latin America market expansion for active storage, as well as business development and leadership roles in the technology sector. She is someone very engaged in a lot of regional and local issues, Orange County, Southern California. She's a graduate from Pepperdine and also Cal State Fullerton. She holds an MBA from the Graciado School of Business and Management. Second, I'd like to also introduce Magali Flores Nunez. She is currently the Deputy State Director at Ready Nation. Magali Flores Nunez serves as the Deputy State Director for Ready Nation in California, where she works with business leaders to build a better workforce through increased investments in early childhood, K through 12 education, after school, and post-secondary education. Most recently, Magali led Ready Nation's Census business engagement efforts as they were chosen by the California Census offices as their official business sector partner. Last but not least, we have also Eduardo Garcia, current Senior Policy Fellow at the Latino Community Foundation. As many know, the premier statewide foundation focused on unleashing the civic empowerment and economic empowerment of Latinos in California. In his role, he coordinates a statewide strategy with the foundation's philanthropic, business, government, and nonprofit partners to mobilize Latinos in the 2020 census and November general election. For over 10 years, he has been dedicated to empowering youth, immigrants, and communities of color to engage in the political process. I want to allow for each one of our panelists to elaborate a little bit more on your organizations, and also a little bit, whatever point we missed that it's important to know on your backgrounds. Rose, can we start with you?
Oh, sure, of course. Well, first of all, I am a mom. I think that family is very central to me. And so as part of our community, our culture, family, community are two values that really are very central to me. As Fidel said, I am very engaging in my business. I'm passionate about the initiatives that I choose to undertake and the teams that I choose to align with. So for that reason, I think it's so important that we be collaborating with each other, that we really focus on being heard, on being counted. And I want to thank you so much for that opportunity. And I'm here representing, of course, the business side of the house. I'm the business owner within the group.
Thank you, Rose. Magali, Eduardo?
Happy to go first. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all again. I'm not sure if many of you have already tuned into some of our other informational census webinars, but as Fidel mentioned, I'm the Deputy Director at Ready Nation, and at Ready Nation, we leverage the leadership and expertise of our business leaders to promote increased investments in education and essentially push for a better workforce and more skilled workforce. Integral to that mission, we have the census, and as the official business sector partner for the California Census Office, we've been working diligently for months to engage business owners of all sizes across our state and across our nation to not only learn about the importance to the census, but how integral it is to our economy. Now more than ever, given our pandemic and subsequent economic crisis, it is incredibly important for business owners to exercise, the power that they have within their communities as trusted messengers to really get out there and get the word out to your customers and your employees. So looking forward to hearing more questions and to sharing with you all why it's important for everyone to get counted this census.
Thank you, Magali. Eduardo?
Hi, good afternoon, folks. Thank you so much to everyone that's joining today. So as Fidel mentioned, my name is Eduardo. I'm with the Latino Community Foundation. And as he mentioned, we're the premier statewide foundation focused on empowering Latinos and making sure that they're counted in the 2020 census and that they're voting in the 2020 general election later this year. From the beginning of actually all throughout this year, we've been working with our nonprofit partners across the state to ensuring that Latinos, which we know, we'll get into more of this later, have historically been a hard to count community, and that's for many reasons. This year, there have been, as you can imagine, additional challenges to getting out a fair and accurate census count. And so, the foundation has been dedicated to ensuring that Latinos across the state have accurate information and that they're getting counted, and that they're spreading the word also about the importance of getting counted now, especially now more than ever. And so I'm looking forward to talking and diving a little bit more into why this is so important, specifically for the Latino community over the next 10 years.
Thank you, Eduardo. And once again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I know we still have a few folks. Actually, we added additional folks on the webinar right now. But I want to get started. We have an amazing lineup and we have different perspectives. But the end goal here is to make sure that our communities are educated, that they're activated, and that we go and do our duties as civic community leaders. And also, again, we're going through critical times. The pandemic has been really, has hit us in so many different ways at different levels. In our communities, our Latino, African-American, and communities of color have been very much impacted. So I wanna get us going with essentially, what is the census? Have a better understanding of what is the census, why does it matter, right? And if we could go over a little bit more of how COVID-19 has impacted, all this process. I know it has started long before the COVID-19, but COVID-19 has really, again, accelerated many things. And as you guys are aware, there are different things happening in politics that are beyond what we could do. But the main question here is, again, just let us know how, what is the census essentially, and why we should all care. Eduardo, would you mind starting us out?
Sure. So, first of all, I want to, I know that there are folks on this Zoom that have heard about the census, that have some idea of what the census is. Maybe you remember participating in the past, and so maybe this is a refresher for you. So as we go over this information, our hope is that you see yourselves as ambassadors for the census, and that you feel empowered to educate the communities that you serve about why it's so important to get counted this year. And so just to boil it down, because there's so much we could talk about with regards to why it's important to get counted, it really boils down to two things, which I'm sure a lot of you have already heard about, right? And that's federal resources, right? Which is basically money, right? And political representation. And so the first piece, right? Every year, California receives on average $115 billion to fund everything from public schools to the construction of roads to hospitals, right? All of these public services that that our communities rely on every single day that we might not always be aware of. And so that's $115 billion on an annual basis. And that amount was determined based on the 2010 census count that was conducted 10 years ago, right? And so the purpose of making sure that everyone is counted is to ensure that we have fair access to dollars from the federal government to fund the programs that matter to Californians. And I want to highlight one particular program as an example of why this is so important, especially in the current context that we're operating under, right, with COVID-19. Healthcare, everyone's talking about the importance of healthcare right now. Healthcare has been an issue for the Latino community even before the pandemic started, right? Half of the state's uninsured population is Latino. And so you know, when we're talking about healthcare access, the Medi-Cal program, which is the state version of the Medicaid program, gets an annual $55 billion just for the Medi-Cal program, which folks rely on to see a doctor if they get sick, to get access to medications that would otherwise be really costly and maybe out of reach for folks that can't afford the prescription prices, right? And so $55 billion, that's how much the state gets on an annual basis for this program. Half of the folks in the state of California that use Medi-Cal to get healthcare access are from the Latino community, right? And so, as you can imagine, in the middle of a pandemic, healthcare access and ensuring that we can continue counting on those resources is so important. I don't want to sound dramatic, but it's a matter of life and death for some folks. And so we can't shy away from saying that. And so that's the first piece. The second piece is about political representation. So we're the most populous state in the country, right? And the goal of the census is to make sure that every state gets equal representation in Congress. We know that members of Congress make decisions about the lives, not just of Californians, but of folks all across the country, right? Of all citizens. And so it's important that we have that representation in Congress and that we have advocates that, you know, reflect the diversity of our state. And so those are the two primary reasons why your participation in the census, especially among Latinos, is so important. We make up 39% of the state. And so it's absolutely critical that Latinos get counted, because if we don't get counted, then we don't have an accurate census count, right? Which is potentially going to result in the loss of resources and political representation. So as you can imagine, in March, right, when the census campaign launched, it was the same month that we all started going into shelter in place, right? And a lot of plans to conduct in-person outreach. You know, we're working with organizations all across the state. We were making plans to knock on doors and host big events that bring in a lot of people, because that's obviously the best way to make those contacts, right? And encourage participation. Obviously, that hasn't been able to happen. And so we have had to rely on technology and Zoom, platforms like this, to talk about why it's so important to get counted, because we simply haven't been able to go out and conduct this outreach in person. And obviously, you know, the pandemic, the 2020 elections, there's so much vying for people's attention right now that sometimes the census is not on top of mind for folks. And so that's why it's so important that there are ambassadors like yourselves that are spreading this information and ensuring folks that it's really important to get counted. And then another challenge that I want to highlight that's specifically important to the Latino community is concerns about how data that is collected by the Census Bureau is used, right? And so there are concerns, particularly among the immigrant community, about how this data could potentially be used against them. And so I want to use this opportunity to just remind everyone that the data that you provide to the Census Bureau through the census questionnaire cannot be shared with the federal government, cannot be shared with any federal agency, right, including immigration agencies like ICE. This is exclusively for the purpose of getting counted and ensuring that we have access to those federal dollars and the political representation in Congress. And so, as you can imagine, another challenge that we faced is there's confusion also around there's confusion about who can fill out the census. So, for example, the Trump administration previously tried to exclude undocumented folks specifically from getting counted. or try to include a citizenship question on the questionnaire. And it's important to remind folks that, one, there is no citizenship question on the questionnaire currently, right? You're not going to find it on the questionnaire. And then two, the census is for everyone to fill out, regardless of their immigration status. And so those are some of the concerns that we see often come up within the community that are important to acknowledge and to make folks aware of. There are other reasons that make the Latino community particularly difficult to count, right? Which is, again, why it's so important to have spokespersons that can speak directly to the unique questions that members of the community might have. Young children often go uncounted, right? Folks that maybe don't speak English, maybe feel like this isn't for them, right? There's a number of reasons why folks feel like the census is not for them. And so we have to remind them that it's for everyone to fill out and that they have until September 30th to fill out the questionnaire. So that gives us a little over a month, but we want to remind folks that they should not delay, right? That they should be filling it out today if they haven't already, and they can do so online, my2020census.gov. There are phone numbers that I'll put in the chat that's another method by which you can fill out the census in multiple languages, including English and Spanish, right? And the folks that didn't fill out the census in the early stages should have received a paper form. And so that's another potential option for you to make yourself counted in the census, simply by filling out the form and returning it at your earliest convenience. Last week, on the 11th, I'm starting to lose track of time because living in the pandemic times, I'm like, what? When was the 11th? The 11th was last week. So starting last week, enumerators began knocking on doors, right? Going to communities, going specifically to households that have not yet filled out the form. And so they're going to continue doing that through the end of the census period, which ends on the September 30th. And we want to remind folks just of a couple of things to look out for when they're, if they maybe notice enumerators. The best way, obviously there are ways to identify who these folks are. So they will have a government badge, they'll have a laptop or some kind of mobile device that has the census logo on it. They'll be working between the hours of 9 in the morning and 9 in the afternoon. They'll be wearing masks and gloves, right? Because safety is the most important thing. And they're not going to ask to enter your home. That's a really important note, something to make folks aware of. They should not be asking to enter your home. All of this, their assistance that they're providing should be conducted outside of the home. And so those are just a few things to be mindful of as enumerators begin going out into communities. And so I've thrown a lot of information at you all. And I think, one of the statistics that I want to point out really quickly before I wrap up, at this point, 65.8% of households have filled out the questionnaire, right? So we have just a little over a month to go to ensuring that we close that gap and that we get everyone counted in the state so that we don't lose out on those resources and political representation over the next 10 years.
Wow, that's a lot of great information, Eduardo, and thank you so much for going into detail. I know that, as mentioned, time is critical, time is of the essence, and now more than ever, we really need to get behind this and really need to activate. And, I'm sure there's a lot of leaders on this webinar that I'm sure are listening and trying to figure out how they could, become active and support our communities. But I'd like to also have Magali share a little bit, same context, essentially why is it so important, the census, and just to give us a little more additional, I know you're being engaged in so many different directions as well, and the census is one of the charges that you're also leading. Can you share a little feedback here?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for your question, Fidel and Eduardo. That definitely, I want to make sure to compliment all the incredible information you've shared already. As I mentioned earlier, Ready Nation California, we've taken on engaging businesses, both large and small businesses across the state, to really be, as Eduardo shared, ambassadors to the census through their regular workflow. I know that in many ways the pandemic has disrupted many of your workflows, so we've tried to creatively come together and put together collateral or different ways to support businesses that wouldn't disrupt your workflow, that would support, and in some instances even cut some costs to your regular work days, so that we can make it as easy as possible for you to promote the census among your employees and your customers. I'm going to backtrack a little bit and complement some of the data that Eduardo has already shared with us about how the census really informs resources and informs political representation. So one of the aspects on resources is one that, in the last couple of years has become the most valuable resource in our world. And, we've come to see the growth of data and how we use big data in our everyday lives, particularly in the context of business. Data is a powerful tool that you can use to inform very important business decisions. But it doesn't only inform business owners, it informs government on how to make decisions over where to place a hospital, or where to place, more WIC centers, or more where there's a need for school lunches and or free school lunches. So data, many of you might not know, or if you're not already using it, that the U.S. Census Bureau and the data collected by the census provides the largest, most comprehensive source of free data to you. I know Rose mentioned earlier data, and if many of you use consultants use the U.S. Census Bureau's data as well. So these data sets, as many of you might know with who work with data is only as good as its accuracy. So we need to make sure that everyone is counted so that business owners like yourselves can use this data accurately. And it can inform all sorts of business decisions. One example is if you have a limited marketing budget, knowing where your target customers live, or who is represented by the community that you serve, and stocking your shelves with products that appeal to that customer base is one of the ways that you can leverage the data that the census provides to your business. But as Eduardo mentioned, the census provides returns to California billions of dollars over the course of 10 years. And because it happens every 10 years, it's so important that we make sure that we receive that accurate count that will reflect in that funding. Things like roads, things like English learning programs, the CHIP program for children's health, so many programs that are integral to your employee's life, including childcare. As we know, childcare right now is one of the issues that it's truly affecting how we reopen our economy across the nation. So things like that are all important things to remember as you promote the census among your networks. One other aspect of our campaign that we've been talking to businesses about is the aspect of leveraging your voice among your community. Many of you are members of chambers, your local chambers or your local Hispanic chamber. Talk about it amongst yourselves. Use the data that we can connect you with to know what numbers look like in your own community. I know we've been doing a lot of phone calls, or we did over the last month, to tell folks what percentage exactly in their community has not been counted. So coming up with plans that have already been taken place. All of your counties have complete count committee meetings that you can tap into virtually. You don't have to start from scratch. You can definitely leverage the resources that organizations like the Latino Community Foundation and Ready Nation have already done for you. And you can easily leverage those resources to promote the census.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was very important information you shared, Magali and Eduardo. Since you kind of mentioned, the small businesses and the impact and how critical they have been for the census, I'd like to have Rose also jump in, as a business owner herself and also a community leader. How does she see the census? What's the impact, for her business and also community at large?
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I think the census is so helpful. It's if you own a business, you think of this as the data capture portion of your research. And then once you have the data, then you can figure out how to use it, how to manipulate it. But on a business level, I think the census can really drive growth for businesses. Why? Because you can look at demographic data. Demographic data can identify your labor pool. How many resources, how many individuals are available for you to hire? Who are your potential customers? Perhaps looking at the feasibility of opening either new offices, new stores, expanding, or going into different markets for you. As well as looking at the local statistics, like you were saying, Magali. There's so much data and so many different ways to slice it and dice it that we can look at consumer spending. And we can look at perhaps new building permits. For some of my clients, that's very important. They're in the commercial real estate environment. So yes, there's so much that we can do with data, but it needs to be right. It needs to be accurate. It needs to be current. And with the fact that the census happens every 10 years, we really need to leverage that. We need to be counted. And so it's important. I know some of the statistics that some of the Alpha board of directors members were looking at is there are a lot of people with 14.6 million Latinos projected to vote in the 2020 election. Latinos are projected really to become the largest minority group in the electorate. So that's incredible. That's great news. But at the same time, there was another study that was conducted in 2017, and it was done by Election Data Services. And the findings were that after the 2020 census, California will not gain additional seats in the US House of Representatives. So, no matter of fact, very close to losing one seat for the very first time in history. So, go out, be represented, be counted.
Wow, that's amazing information there, Rose, that you pointed out. I think from what I'm gathering here, representation matters. Resources, the allocation of resources is critical for what we're doing and how our communities are being, represented. And I think whether it's business, whether it's, education, healthcare, at all levels and different industries, it's impacting and will be impacting for years to come. I know that we're, could go on and have this conversation, and I know Eduardo, Magali, and Rose, you guys have very much, a wealth of knowledge around this topic, census, and getting counted, and essentially why it's important. And then ultimately, the other topic, it's also voting, right? And which comes down to also why representation matters and why it's important to go out there and vote. I want to just quickly ask you, what are ways that you see that our community leaders or just any member in the community could get engaged or could help or could support your efforts and the efforts at the state, national level, and other local grassroots organizations? Can you briefly share, again, some of the ways that you think or you have seen that some of these, folks have, really been successful? And at the same time, any other, additional item that you could share that, again, could really fuel and support our community?
Absolutely. So I think there are excellent resources that are, again, supported by the dollars that are generated from this data. And so they come from where? SCORE, all right? SCORE as well as SBDC, Small Business Development Center. incredible groups of individuals. What they do is they're there specifically to help small business, small, medium businesses. And what they do is they can help people establish a new business, whether it's a proprietorship, a partnership, a corporation. They can help establish businesses to scale and grow. And I think it's so important. There are so many resources. People that have experience with their own businesses are there to help the rest of us in the business community. So I think that's excellent. And I really would like to have that continued. So anything that I can do to help, I'm all for it. And so I will always vouch and promote the SBDC and SCORE. In addition to our great, so many other things. In addition to our great colleges and universities that have students, alumni, and are great resources for many companies to hire either part-time alumni, interns, or full-time people. So there you go.
Thank you, Rose. Magali?
Yeah, I shared a little bit on what some businesses are doing, but I do want to mention that there are so many businesses already promoting the census. You know, companies like Wells Fargo, Kaiser Permanente, Southern California Edison. We've had food trucks. We've had small business chambers. We have all sorts of, you know, business leaders on the size spectrum involved in their capacity. We understand that everyone's in a different place with the pandemic. And so we definitely have tried to meet businesses where they're at with the activities that we've proposed. Some of those involved engaging your social media platforms. So even as little as following the Latino Community Foundation, Ready Nation California, you know, the Hispanic Chamber, any source that is already promoting the census, and simply retweeting it with your own comment, tagging your members if you're a chamber, or tagging your family members if you know that there are folks in your family or in your community who are hesitant to be counted, getting the word out there, because when you do that, you are an influencer in your community. So leveraging social media platforms is a very easy way to get the word out. Leveraging, as I mentioned, the resources provided in your region, if you want to keep it regional. Every county has a complete count committee, and I'm happy to connect you all if you want to be connected directly to folks doing the census work in your community. They have community-centered resources, data informing you every day what the numbers are. As Eduardo mentioned, we have a little bit over a month. So this is a time for all of us to come together. You know, it's all hands on deck. Make sure everyone is counted. Whether if all you can do is retweet something every day, that's good enough. Or if you can put up a poster in your storefront. If you look at our social media website, we have a campaign, our Business Census Champion campaign, where we highlight the efforts, no matter how small, that businesses have been making across our state. And you could get ideas from there. But as easy as putting up a poster, if somebody comes in and asks, handing them a flyer that you can get for free from one of the census partners. Those are just a few ideas.
Excellent, Magali. Thank you so much. Eduardo, you know, I'm sure you have a lot of other ways that we could activate it. And again, I think our audience, we have a blend of community leaders, business owners, and, you know, everything in between. So would you please share anything?
Yeah, I think Rose and Magali pretty much touched on everything, right? I think right now, you know, with the pandemic, there's still, unfortunately, so much restriction on what we can do in person. And we know that in person is the best way to, it's a really good way to make sure that the hardest to count communities are being reached out to. And I think in addition to that, you know, something that Magali mentioned was, if you want to get active with your local complete count committee, there's one in every community. I can drop the link in here too, for that, where you can, it's like a directory where you can find where you can get connected. And then, yeah, like I think another big piece is recognizing the influence that you have in your own community, right? To spread the word about the census. I think in the last month, there's so much that has changed about census, right? And in terms of like information, new information that has come out, and that has caused a lot of confusion in the community about what it means to be counted, who can be counted, until when can we be counted. And so I think a big piece is just sharing the information, because really it boils down to just, it's a questionnaire that should take less than 15 minutes to fill out that has such a long-term impact for the community, right? And so I think that's as Magali said, using the platforms that you have to share accurate information. And I think when it comes from folks like, if my local grocer tells me to fill out the census, I'll do it because I trust them, right? If we're hearing these messages from members of the communities that we trust, then we're more likely to follow through. If we're hearing it from outside, then there's more hesitation and there's more resistance perhaps to following through. And I think this is especially true for the folks that are watching us today that are in communities that speak predominantly in Spanish. That's something that's also a very, very critical effort. From the beginning of our campaign, we've been connecting our local community partners with radio stations, that Spanish language radio stations that are platforms, right? That can be a space where we can share information about the census in the language that our community speaks in, right? As an example of something else to be leveraged. So thinking about where these platforms are, tapping into them, and it's really the messengers that are so important, right? If it's coming from folks that we trust, then we're more likely to follow through with filling out the form.
Gracias, Eduardo. Gracias, Magali and Rose. Es importante y crítico que podamos no solamente apoyar y realmente como comunidad latina, una familia grande que tenemos que no solamente apoyarnos los unos a los otros, pero ser los líderes que necesitan ahorita a nuestras communities. Bueno, having said that, I want to also open it up. I know we may have some questions. Alex, would you mind, just going over if whatever questions our audience may have at the moment?
Sure. We actually have a few going in right now. Folks, got some time, go ahead, ask your question in the Q&A section. I'll check chat, but the Q&A is a lot quicker to get noticed. So the first one is from an anonymous, what media outlets and strategic approach is taking place to get the word out to the grassroots underserved community? Magali, I think you spoke on this a little bit. If you want to go a little more in depth about that.
Yeah, both, and Eduardo touched on it right now with the radio stations as well, but the state of California made an unprecedented investment in getting everyone counted, and this was previous to the pandemic. And part of that investment detailed media outlets and reaching out to what they're calling the hard to count communities, which include Latinos, African Americans, different ethnic and minorities and races. But also include veterans, senior citizens. Eduardo mentioned earlier that one of the largest groups that tends to go undercounted is young children. So, each of us in our respective communities and through all the census partners that the California Census Office chose, we've been doing our due diligence to work with media outlets in our own communities in the languages that we speak. And for us, Spanish, to do that work. Now, the California Census Office is also working with different communications consultants, along with, broadcast media like Univision, like Telemundo, who have been very renowned supporters of the census and have done their due diligence to get the word out through, their news networks, through different advertisements at specific times to reach specific audiences. I know some time ago in May, myself and one of our census business champions, Luis Moran from Torta Móvil, we did a radio, and then also one of our other census business champions from a local grocery store in South LA, we did a radio special in Spanish for a business audience there. So, you know, we've all been doing our part in different ways, but on a larger, you know, in a larger scale, the California Census Office has invested part of those funds into media specifically.
Thank you, Magali. Alex, you have any additional
Yes.
questions?
We also have another one here. I believe it's from Blanca. It's difficult to overcome the fear most people have about filling out census forms. Is there any advice you can give when speaking to these people who are a little more scared about something or maybe misinformed?
And I'll just, anyone that wants to jump in.
Yeah, I think, you know, earlier when we were talking about, you know, the challenges that come with counting Latinos, immigrants, you know, I think that's a reflection of what folks are seeing, you know, in the politics right now. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of worry, and I think there's a couple of things. I think it's important who the messengers are, right? Like I said before, right? If it's coming from someone, if folks are hearing these messages from someone they trust, they're more likely to, you know, they're more likely to fill out the census form because they trust who is delivering information about what the purpose of the census is and what the benefits are, right? And so I think it's twofold. It's reminding folks what the benefits are, right, of participating in the census. Earlier, I talked about the Medi-Cal program, right, which is a way in which low-income folks can get access to healthcare. And we're talking about the program is 13 million Californians that rely on this to see a doctor and to get medications at a low cost. And so I think it's reminding folks what the benefits are, stating what the facts are, which is there's no citizenship question and all of your data is confidential and protected under federal law. And the messenger, right? Who is delivering these messages? If it's coming from people that I trust, then I'm more likely to fill it out. And so that's why it's so, you all on this call, on this Zoom, have such an important role to play because you're gonna be the ones that are gonna be sharing these messages with members of your community.
And if we take a look at sales, for example, sales in terms of looking at prospects and clients and making decisions, then if we look at the individuals that haven't yet decided if they're going to participate in the census, then we need to realize that it's going to take at least 7 different touch points, 7 different ways that we get that message out. So the TV, the radio spots are great, and I think the community engagement is great, but I think we need to continue to send that message more often. We have 4 weeks to get it done.
Thank you, Rose. So we gotta get our tios, tias, you know, the abuelitas, abuelitos, and friends, you know, and extended friends, families, and business acquaintances and networks that we have. I think there's several layers there, but I think if each one of the participants here goes and shares that message as a trusted member of the community and within their families and friends, I think we could definitely do some damage. And I think based on, you know, what was shared on the panel, the social media aspect, right? It has become very critical. You know, now we're living the Zoom life, I call it, you know, or on some occasions it's WebEx or other softwares that we have there, but everything is virtual. So I think, you know, a lot of the messaging and other communication out there is across social media. So it's important for us, even, and I would like to invite you all to make sure that we follow all the organizations today, you know, the Radio Nation, Latino Community Foundation, California Hispanic Chambers of Commerce, Alpha OC, you know, follow them. And, you know, it's really up to us, you know, how we could engage and share the message. These organizations are putting out there a lot of great resources. So it takes about 2 to 3 seconds to share, reshare, and really put your own messaging and touch there. But the more that we do that, the more that we're able to, again, just expand the messaging there. Alex, do you have any additional questions?
Sure. We just got one in here from Dario. Dario from El Clasificado here. Very great information. On their end, we saw a very committed cities willing to invest in their local reach, but didn't notice a lot of top-down buy to cover major counties or dense cities through our outlets. Is there any talk of new allocated budgets set to have invested over the month to come? Magali or Eduardo, have you heard anything about this?
Can you rephrase the question, Alex? Please?
Sure. He's asking, certain cities had invested very hard in their local reach, but several major counties and dense cities, they hadn't seen a lot of outreach put in. They were asking if there's any talk of new allocated budget to invest in this last month. Have you heard of, I know Magali, you spoke about how much California put in. Have you heard of anything new, I guess is what they're asking.
I think as a direct response, I haven't heard anything new, the breakdown of what additional investments have been made, but definitely new information, new resources, new strategies have been pulled in the last, week or two, or since the announcement of the new operational deadline. So I think we're all working together I'll step back and say that one really amazing thing about this census is that we have real-time data. And so using that real-time data and maps that the California Census Office and the US Census Bureau are updating, either daily or every other day with new information has really helped inform strategies, at least in our organization, on where we can pivot and where we can be most effective. So I'm happy to share links to those resources, but you can see, you can sort things by counties, you can sort things by assembly district, by cities, and just see the breakdown through different labels and layers on who is getting counted, where they're not getting counted. And so, pivoting and directing our efforts there. Also make one additional note that I didn't share earlier on the power of businesses. We have over 4 million businesses across our state. And so that in itself, that power in numbers and the power that you all have to spread the word is inspiring. But many businesses are in places where sometimes we cannot be, or government cannot be. And I'm speaking, an example is unincorporated areas where they may not have as many resources or as many folks that are, walking the streets because it's more rural. And so having businesses be the voice of or ambassadors for the census there is so incredibly important. I'll stop there and let any more of my fellow panelists share.
Thank you, Magali. Eduardo, Rose?
Magali answered it perfectly.
Thank you, Eduardo. I like to add quickly there that, despite the efforts that, are coming, whether it's through the state or our local, our counties or local municipalities, I think I also like us to challenge ourselves, right? As civic leaders, community leaders, that we do what it takes as well. I know that at the end of the day, the timing, it's only 30 plus days that we have. So it really comes down to what can we do, right? As a community leader, as someone that lives in the city, that understands how important this is, to really not wait, right? And we know that bureaucracy sometimes does what it does, and sometimes whatever funds, sometimes they get allocated timely, sometimes they don't. And instead of waiting for that 30-day block there, whether they get funding to promote even more or not, I think it's really up to us to really also get out there and do what we can, whether it's just through social media, right now boots on the ground, or really kind of partnering with some of that great organizations that we have. And I think that's, again, I just want to share that because we have a lot of great and amazing community leaders that are on the webinar today. And a lot of them are also doing their part. And thank you for that. Alex, do we have anything else?
We got two more quick ones if we want to run through them. One is what are some outreach efforts organizations can do digitally to reach out to our Latino community? I know you guys have kind of been speaking on it, but you want to continue. I believe just being on this call was one of them.
Perfect. Well, Thank you. I think for the questions there, Alex, I think definitely, I think the panel already addressed some of those things. And as I mentioned, it really takes a second or two to follow some of these great, amazing organizations. And they're sharing a lot of great content, so it really takes seconds to reshare and really put your own spin to it and really kind of, amplify the mic, if you will. But with that said, I'm going to be mindful of the time. I want to get you guys back to your, day-to-day activities, and perhaps maybe a little stretch, a little water to be, to drink. With all these heat, we really need to stay hydrated. But I just want to take a time to thank all the panelists for their, information and just bringing all the resources as well. And I want to thank all the organizations that came together to, again, just bring this topic, which is critical. The main message is representation matters for our community. The resource allocation is critical, and we need to get out there. We need to get counted, and we need to get out there and, vote, make our voices heard. So thank you again, Alex and the team, California Hispanic Chambers. And with that, I think we could call it a day.
Thank you all so much. You have a great day.
Gracias, muy amable.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.